A young woman is discovered dead in a rented flat in Aberdeen. There are no signs of forced entry, and she's been raped before being killed. But detectives have a difficult task on their hands to discover who murdered her. Her phone is missing, and the killer has long since fled the scene, leaving behind only a single £1 coin. To solve this murder will require a meticulous search of the CCTV and the victim's phone records to discover the identity of the vicious killer on the loose in a big city. Catching a killer requires conclusive forensic evidence. From clues at the scene of the crime to minute examination in the forensics lab, from the cold reality of the pathologist's table to DNA sampling, digital analysis, each piece of killer evidence brings the murderer closer to justice. It's the 12th of February 2016 in Aberdeen, and an unsuspecting landlord discovers the body of a young female tenant, Jessica McGrath. Former Detective Inspector Gary Winter will lead the investigation.
So behind me there is Union Terrace. The landlord arrived about lunchtime on Friday, the 12th of February 2016, let himself in using his key with the anticipation of cleaning the flat. What he found was that Jessica was unresponsive on a bed at the back of the flat. Phoned 999 to get medical attention, and they advised him to try and perform CPR on Jessica, try and save her life.
The landlord is told to move her onto the floor to make the CPR more effective. Paramedics soon arrive at the flat and confirm that the woman is already dead, so the police are called.
She was a young woman, partially clothed, and there's no indication that there's any drugs misuse or anything else that might have caused her to suddenly die.
Police suspect Jessica has died in suspicious circumstances, so they treat the flat as a crime scene. Her body is the first piece of evidence.
There was no obvious sign of an assault on Jessica. There wasn't a lot of blood, there wasn't any stab wounds, so she's dead on a bed. Don't know the circumstances. The belief from attending officers is that she may have been working as a prostitute from there. Murder prostitutes are extremely high profile, and high profile for a reason, because quite often they'll happen in groups. You know, they will get victim after victim after victim if you don't detect it very, very quickly and lock up the perpetrator. So the first thing that I did was to deploy a crime scene manager.
My understanding is that this flat was quite a small flat with quite a confined space. Our victim, Jessica, was a sex worker, so she's obviously had clients in her room, and there's obviously a lot of forensic potential in that room from fingerprints and DNA, where we're looking at potential footprints on the floor and any other trace evidence. We would look at putting tread plates down, which effectively kind of make a CSI walk above the crime scene without touching anything. It's almost like we walk on air, because we put these tread plates down to protect the surface.
One of the first lines of inquiry for Gary Winter's team is to find out all they can about Jessica, known as victimology. Victimology is a process by which the police begin to map the way a person lived their lives, to get little hints of clues about why they might be vulnerable. In cases like Jessica McGrath, it allows police to build a profile of who this person was, and crucially, give them a probability about who might want to do her harm. She was a sex worker. That in itself is a risky profession. And of course, in that instance, the focus is going to turn upon her customers.
When she was about 26, she met a UK national in Nigeria, moved to the UK, had a child together, and separated. She was escorting, trying her best to make as much money as she could to look after her child and give them the best opportunities in life.
Officers are already investigating a rape in the area just days before, so they're on high alert.
We'd had a significant sexual crime probably within a couple of hundred metres away at the park directly opposite us to the left, Union Terrace Gardens, where a student had been raped by a complete stranger. It was unsolved.
Jessica was staying on the same street where the woman was raped. Could the two crimes be linked?
Aberdeen is generally a safe place to live, to work, to go out in. I've lived in Aberdeen my whole life and I've certainly always felt that way. But when something like that happens, two serious incidents in a very short space of time, very close to each other, it's really unsettling. And you do start to ask questions about, am I safe to go out? Are young females safe to go out? So definitely a feeling of unease.
With public concern already running high, DI Winter needs to act fast to establish what has happened to Jessica.
The most obvious thing that stood out for me was she didn't look like she was dressed for being with a client. She had on a sort of long overcoat and a scarf around her neck. It didn't look like she had stripped off to provide professional services for somebody. It looked like a hurried, rushed sexual assault. So that night we would have examined Jessica at scene. Pathologists and biologists would have gone in. They would have taken tapings from Jessica's body in case she would touch DNA from an accused person. Or additionally, Jessica would be swabbed internally to see if there was any sign of semen.
If it appears that someone's been sexually assaulted before they've been murdered, it's really important to preserve those potential samples. Due to the fact that some of the samples are quite liquid, they may seep out, then we potentially can't say your victim's been raped because the semen now isn't in her high vaginal swabs, it's actually on the floor next to her body because it's seeped out. So it's really quite important to think about how you're going to sample a body in a crime scene before you move it.
With testing completed and Jessica's body removed, the forensic team find a receipt underneath it. It's examined in the hope it could lead detectives to the killer.
You would tend to carry on examining that crime scene after the body's been removed for several hours to several days to several weeks. You're looking at the minute detail, which it might be that one receipt that nails your offender, that catches that killer, that's that killer piece of evidence.
We could see no signs of forced entry to the flat. The implication would be that Jessica had let the perpetrator into the flat. Either she knew him or that they were a customer.
The team conducted detailed search of the bedroom, including the bin.
One of the things that we recovered was a bin full of bagged condoms. It would appear that with clients, everyone would have to wear a condom, and after sex had concluded, she would take a baby wipe, remove the condom with a baby wipe, put it into a nappy sack, tie it, and bin it.
Each condom that Jessica has meticulously disposed of will be collected and forensically tested for DNA. Attention next turns to the bed that Jessica was found dead on.
One of the key finds from the flat, particularly in terms of cause of death, was a pillow on the bed that had an impression of what transpired to be Jessica's makeup on it, as if her face had been potentially pressed into a pillow. Also on the bed was a £1 coin. On its own, potentially insignificant, but it would seem at odds with the rest of the scene of what looked like a sort of professional arrangement on the bed.
But the police are also aware of what they haven't found in the flat: her mobile phone.
Given Jessica's occupation, her phone was going to be a major line of inquiry as to who'd been in touch with her through whatever means, email, text message, phone, whatever. So that potential piece of evidence was missing.
The murder is quickly declared Category A, which is predominantly reserved for the killing of children or sex workers. Press interest in Jessica's death is running high, especially after the recent rape.
When you're a journalist, we don't want to jeopardise any investigation. But at that point, when you don't know the circumstances behind that rape, you don't know the circumstances behind the murder, that's the really important role that the media play, is that we can ask that question. Are these incidents connected? And it should be for the police to want to quell and dampen any public concern and reassure the public that these are two separate incidents that are not connected.
But at this stage of the investigation, all information related to Jessica's murder is strictly confidential.
It's really difficult to keep the public informed whilst balancing the integrity of the investigation. You don't want to have needlessly told people information that they don't need to know. Particularly if you find a suspect and they come in and they give you a bit of information, you want that information to be only known to them and not something that you've told the papers the day before that they could have read.
Are the streets safe? What are the police doing to catch the killer? Detective Gary Winter knows he must use all the investigative tools available to round up the suspects before the murderer strikes again. Jessica McGrath has been found dead in her rented flat in Aberdeen. There's no evidence of forced entry, and all the signs are that she's been raped before being killed. Police begin a thorough search and find a till receipt under Jessica's body. They also discover a bin full of used condoms and a pillowcase with Jessica's makeup on it, plus a £1 coin on the bed. But Jessica's mobile phone is missing. Police have examined Jessica's body at the scene, and now it's been sent for post-mortem to see if it can reveal any clues as to the identity of the murderer. Was it a client or a random stranger? Public anxiety is high because someone was raped on the same street just a few days earlier. Now Jessica's been murdered and possibly raped. Because she was a prostitute, it's been deemed Category A, and police know they must act fast to catch a dangerous killer.
The next stage after recovering Jessica's body from the flat is to do a post-mortem as soon as possible. Confirm that we're dealing with a homicide initially. She was found to be a healthy woman generally. There was no underlying medical condition that might explain her death. It was the view of the pathologists that mechanical asphyxiation was recorded as the method of death, which basically means external forces applied which effectively restricts the breathing. So that was a combination potentially of smothering with the pillow and manual strangulation with the scarf that was around her neck.
Police also believe Jessica has been raped.
In cases where we think this may be a sex-related homicide, one of the procedures we will carry out is what we call an en-bloc dissection. We're trying to remove the sexual organs and everything back up to the uterus. Then we can have a proper look to see if there's any damage that we can attribute to penetration of the vagina.
Semen was recovered from Jessica, which was sent for analysis. About that time, probably take 2-3 days to sort of come back with a result, a DNA profile. Some prostitutes will have sex with people without a condom on. So the finding of the sort of condoms in the bags was very evidentially significant, and that this is the way that Jessica professionally operates. She didn't do sex without a condom. So our belief at that point is that Jessica's been raped. But what we had on the other side of that was the potential for somebody just being able to say, I paid for sex without a condom and that's what we had, and I left and she was fine when I left. Obviously we can't get an account from Jessica, but we can based on all the other customers that are prepared to speak to us and establishing in terms of working as a prostitute. Did she always do this? How did she behave?
As the team work out their next step, the results from chemical tests on a pillowcase with an imprint of makeup on it come back.
We all understand how a lipstick mark can leave an impression on another item, on a tissue, in this case on a pillowcase. And then you obviously got to say, could this particular grease, these particular colours, these particular different constituents in this recipe, is that the same as this one in this stick of lipstick?
The chemist found that it was one static mark from the face on the pillow. The significance of that for me was that it made it difficult for the defence's position to be, it's just a stain from her falling asleep with her makeup on.
Death by asphyxiation and strangulation, combined with semen in her vagina, despite apparently always using a condom, makes Gary Winter believe she's been killed whilst being raped.
Rape's a really, really difficult charge to prove. Even with a prostitute who survives because of perceptions of jury, when you have the rape of a prostitute who's not able to give evidence because she's deceased, it becomes even more difficult.
It's often one person's word against another. Often there's no evidence. And as a consequence, less than 3% of all rape allegations end in potential prosecutions. And it's much harder when it comes to sex workers. Many members of the public, wrongly believe that sex workers automatically consent to sex and effectively can't be raped. But of course, in those instances, the prosecutors just have to build up a case, process step by step, procedure by procedure, to be able to build an evidential case that is very persuasive.
If she had been having sex with clients without a condom on, naturally you would have drainage either onto bed sheets, onto underwear that she hasn't had a chance to wash yet, and we didn't find any. Only places we found semen was within Jessica and the semen that was within condoms that were bagged.
Jessica's world was more complex than many other victims of homicide. Gary had to get a sense of the rituals that a sex worker like Jessica might have employed to make herself safe. Did she screen her clients? Did she tell fellow sex workers who she was meeting and on what terms? Did she insist upon a condom? To find out more about Jessica's world, Gary turns to a charity that supports sex workers called National Ugly Mugs.
Through my conversation with Ugly Mugs, they put me onto something that's described as girlfriend experience. It's somebody going with you to the cinema, out for a meal, going to an event. It's not just for the sex, but what they explained to me was that in another trial that they had supported of the rape of a prostitute, the defendant had got off by saying he'd paid for the girlfriend experience, but his girlfriend liked rough sex. I then have to look up what services did Jessica offer that might have put her at risk. And ultimately, when we looked at them all, she didn't do anything that resulted in violence towards her, and she didn't have sex without a condom. So you're able to form quite a cohesive picture that she doesn't take risks.
It's clear that Jessica takes her safety very seriously when seeing clients. All the evidence points to the fact that she's been raped. Gary must find the last individual to see her alive, so he turns his attention to her missing mobile phone. He needs to contact every person she's been in touch with recently to eliminate them from his inquiries.
We go to the network provider and basically request all the data they have that we can justify that might give us some answers as to her movements, what's happened to her phone, who has been in contact with her that could potentially become a person of interest. That is massively significant in terms of trying to timeline her time of death, because if she is a creature of habit that always has her phone on, that's messaging or using the internet, then the sudden absence of that at a particular moment in time would give you reason to believe something sinister had happened. So of the people that contacted her, there was a policy that all would be what we would call trace, interview, eliminate.
Trace, interview and eliminate is simply a process by which they can identify people who can be of assistance to a criminal inquiry, and officers will want to systematically go through her circle of friends and her clients, interview them so they can discover what they know, who last spoke to her, and if it's appropriate, eliminate them from their inquiries.
Could I have a look at your phone? And could we corroborate your movements around the time that we think Jessica's murdered? You'd additionally be asking, could I have an elimination DNA sample?
Jessica's mobile phone records reveal she's been in contact with over 50 people recently, all of whom need to be spoken to.
So we established from speaking to as many clients that were prepared to speak to us as possible that she would not allow herself to be assaulted, choked, strangled by clients. And that all goes to further support that what's happened to Jessica is probably not some sort of legitimate bona fide act between two consenting adults, that she's been physically assaulted at the time when she's died and therefore she's been murdered.
While the work to speak to Jessica's contacts continues, another piece of evidence retrieved from the flat provides a new line of inquiry for Gary Winter and his team.
A receipt's discovered underneath her body. The receipt was from a couple of weeks before the murder. The significant part of that for me was I knew it was the date of the strange rape in the park opposite. I knew from the receipt it had been a card payment, that we would be able to establish who the card owner was, and then to see whether they're linked to the homicide? Why is it underneath Jessica's body? Or were they anything to do with the stranger rape that happened that night? People were very quickly dispatched to the location of the premises where the receipt was paid to establish who the customer was and dispatch officers to go and speak to those individuals.
It turns out the receipt belonged to a group of tourists who were staying in the same flat as Jessica.
They'd done a tour that day, which was where the receipt was from, and their accounts were all the same, that they had done the tour, and coincidentally, and purely coincidentally, they'd stayed in exactly the same apartment for the weekend that Jessica was staying in a fortnight later. A promising lead had diminished. We were back to a very, very challenging situation of stranger rape and murder of Jessica McGrath.
Then Gary Winter receives a piece of positive news from the team. There's a CCTV camera just next door.
The building just next to that was a bank. So the bank itself had CCTV, 2 cameras at the front, basically diagonally pointing over the front door. So what you could get was a clear view of any persons coming from that and going in the flat in this direction.
They soon find CCTV of Jessica in the company of a man. It's a huge breakthrough.
We were able to establish that about 12:30 on Thursday afternoon, Jessica and a large black male who was wearing a camouflage jacket and blue boots came out of the flat, entered a taxi and drove away. They similarly returned, parked the taxi up just where I'm pointing just now. Jessica exits and goes into the flat, shortly followed by the, at that time, unidentified black male who followed her into the flat. So this is the last sighting of Jessica alive.
The man's distinctive clothing is a key piece of evidence in assisting police. They go back through the bank's CCTV footage to see when they can establish the man entering the flat.
We have him arriving at about 11.
The period between 11 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. is significant for Gary. Jessica made a number of calls during this time.
We know Jessica phones a friend and she identifies that she's with another male, and she called him a homeboy, which he thought meant it was somebody from Nigeria. She also phoned a prostitute friend that she knew, and she told him she had a guy who was due her £400 for sex, but he wasn't paying up front. What should she do? The problem Jessica had was at 11 o'clock on Thursday, she's approaching the time when she's due to be leaving the premises. This guy claims to be able to pay, but she needs to know, is he going to pay so that I can pay for another day or not?
Next, the CCTV shows both Jessica and the man walking out of the flat towards a taxi at 12:30 p.m. The taxi driver is interviewed as a witness.
The taxi driver remembers there's conversation around, do you have my £400? He's claiming to her effectively that he's going to source the money, and Jessica immediately phones the landlord, which is the last phone call she makes, which is to book the flat for another day. He drives them to King Street student accommodation. The male says that he's away to get the money, and he walks into a shop, and he looks like he's in there for a couple of minutes, and he comes back out and he gets in the taxi and he tells her, taxi driver's version is he says he's now got the £400.
Police retrieve CCTV from the shop, which clearly shows the man with the camo jacket and blue trainers walking up to the door.
He goes in and he stands just within the shop doorway, but doesn't go into the shop itself. CCTV from the shop shows that. He stood there for a couple of minutes before he returns. But what the view that the taxi driver and Jessica would have had was of him apparently going into the shop, being a couple of minutes, and then emerging out. And when you put all the circumstances together, you can form quite a clear picture that again, it's part of just a bigger deception here to try to persuade somebody, I've got money, I can now pay you.
Then Jessica and her client are dropped off at her flat. She believes he's collected the £400 he owes for her services, but he's tricked her and has no money at all. Though he still wants to have the sex he came for. It's 1:02 p.m. and it's the last time Jessica is seen alive. sex worker Jessica McGrath has been found dead in her rented flat in Aberdeen. There's no sign of forced entry, and the evidence suggests she's been raped before being killed. A post-mortem has established she had unprotected sex and was asphyxiated. Forensic analysis of the pillowcase with her makeup on it has confirmed her attacker has pushed her head down into the pillow, smothering her. Jessica's mobile phone data has led detectives to establish from her clients that she was a highly professional woman who had strict rules and would never consent to unprotected sex. CCTV from outside Jessica's flat has revealed her taking a taxi ride with an unknown man, apparently to collect £400 to pay for her services. But further CCTV revealed that he tricked her and never collected the money. It's 2 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, and the taxi driver has dropped Jessica and her client off at her flat and seen them walk inside. It's the last time Jessica is seen alive.
The footage of the mail arriving with Jessica's massively significant on a number of levels. She appears to be wearing skinny jeans, a long coat and a scarf. Those are all the items of clothing that she's still wearing when she's found murdered on her bed the day later.
The taxi driver's evidence also throws possible light on the pound coin found on Jessica's bed.
The fare is £9. He gets handed a £10 note and he probably thinks that he's going to just get a tip off of that, but he doesn't. The male gets a pound coin change, and the fact that a pound coin ends up in the bed, it is my belief that when they've gotten into the flat, the assault on Jessica has been immediate. The pound coin's probably still in his hand, and he's probably pushed her onto the bed. Doesn't have £400 that he said Tari had. And at that point, he's intent on having sex by whatever means, and that was rape.
The same man is then seen leaving the flat at 1:17 p.m. Gary Winter believes he is closing in on the killer. Then comes a major breakthrough. Detectives track down a name for the suspect.
We established from the taxi company the number of the person who booked the taxi and that his name was Balachinda. We were also able to look at that number and see that that was also a number that had phoned Jessica on the morning that we believe she was murdered. So in terms of your level of interest, he massively increases at that point.
Police discover from the phone company that Balachinda has disposed of the phone he had when he was with Jessica and now has a new number. They establish that he's a student at Robert Gordon University.
When the officers have gone to speak to him in terms of his initial TIE, trace, interview, eliminate, his reply when they've sort of said what they're there to speak to him about is, I met a woman in Union Terrace, we had sex and I left. He's obviously immediately put himself in the suspect bracket without saying I murdered her, but he's put himself there having sex, and we know at that stage he's probably one of the last people to see her alive.
Balachinda has not been charged with anything, so police must apply for a warrant to search his address.
So the main bits of evidence we found, his blue trainers, which were obviously useful to link to the CCTV, his jacket. We didn't believe that they would be necessarily forensically linked to Jessica because we didn't have a crime scene that had a lot of blood, so there might not be a lot of cross-contamination of one person onto another. But from the point of view of being able to say that's the jacket and that's the shoes, they are a very good visible indicator for a jury that this was the individual who was on CCTV, that's what he's wearing when he enters the flat. Basically, another piece of the jigsaw.
Balachinda is arrested on suspicion of rape and murder.
Once he was arrested, he would have been medically examined for injuries and would have had DNA samples taken, photographed and fingerprinted, and the DNA sample would normally have been like a mouth swab, buccal mouth swab, rubbed in the inside of his gum to get saliva and the DNA off his saliva. We obviously start looking into Balachinda's background to try and work out who he is, when did he get here, do they have any prior association with Jessica. From those inquiries we discovered that he was the son of a Nigerian diplomat who worked at the embassy in China, that he'd had pretty reasonable upbringing in terms of going on skiing holidays and all that, a sort of completely different lifestyle to that we understand Jessica had when she was brought up. Balachinda was interviewed and replied no comment to all questions asked. The only statement he made to us was the statement he made, which was the one that resulted in him being arrested, which was similar to, I met a woman on Union Terrace, we had sex and I left.
In relation to a no comment interview in England, you're naturally and always given a caution. If you don't mention anything now, then it may harm your defence later. So basically encouraging suspects to tell the truth or some version of the truth. And that's very useful for police because they can test that, and if they give a version and they can prove it's a lie, that's very helpful for the prosecution. In Scotland, however, there are no consequences within your right, and no adverse inference may be taken from your silence. For a suspect, it often is a very rational thing to do. If you're guilty, it's often best to remain silent. A jury in England and Wales may add an inference that if you were innocent, you might give a version of your truth. But in Scotland, that's not the case. So it makes the work of these Scottish detectives much more difficult. They have to go the extra mile to get a conviction.
One of the factors that is causing Gary Winters some concern is proving that Jessica's death wasn't just an accident.
Jessica's not been overtly physically battered, if you like. She had her scarf around her neck, which could have been used to manually strangle her, and some bruising around her neck. But it's not left an awful lot of marks. And you have a situation whereby, from the position the body was on the bed, if, for example, a very heavy-built male is having sex with a woman from behind and he puts all his body weight on top of her torso, that can cause what's called positional asphyxia.
Positional asphyxia is when a person dies because their breathing is compromised. And of course, in this particular case, if it's sex-related, then very often these are asphyxial type deaths. We'd be looking for a redness or a purple discoloration to the face. Sometimes it looks a bit swollen, and you get these tiny little pinpoint hemorrhages, and we see them frequently in and around the eyes. We have to work out how the person was asphyxiated. And of course, again, coming back to the sex-related homicides, it's very often strangulation.
So because the homicide is subtle and there's not an awful lot of clues to it, and because you don't really have an account to explain what could have happened, coupled with the potential opportunities within her occupation that might allow him reasons to say, I paid for that. You might get some elaborate excuse come out here, and you're unsighted on a lot of them. So I'm not there sitting thinking we've won the war at that stage, that's for sure. You know there's a long, long way to go to sort of box off every possible avenue for him so that you get the appropriate outcome at trial.
Gary Winter urgently needs the DNA results to come back from both the seaman and Balachinda to confirm that he was the man that raped Jessica.
Balachinda's DNA was not on any sort of law enforcement database, but we were able to compare that unknown male's DNA from Jessica with the mouth swab from Balachinda, and it was a perfect match. To establish the rape charge, it was vitally important that there was no other evidence of semen in the flat.
All body fluids have a potential triage process where you're doing a presumptive test to say what that body fluid is. And in the case of semen, there's an acid phosphatase test. So you look at the item that you think has semen on it and then apply a chemical to it, which will react with the chemicals that are in the fluid itself, and you get a blue colour.
If she'd been working there for 3 days as an escort that was having unprotected sex with all her clients, there would be a lot of different semen on bed sheets, on pants, on washing, and there wasn't. That's very significant.
But Gary Winter not only has to prove rape, which is tough enough, he also has to prove that Balachinda murdered her either during or after having sex.
So the semen from the post-mortem examination is probably one of the most crucial bits of evidence, because firstly, it confirms it's Balachinda's had sex with her. Secondly, it can allow a fair bit of reasonable interpretation that that semen is deposited at a time when Jessica's body's not been upright and active afterwards. Otherwise, gravity and drainage would have sort of taken place of that semen, and it would drained if she'd gone for a shower, or if it had drained if she'd just pulled up some pants and put them on. There would be natural leakage and drainage into those pants, and there wasn't. There was no drainage into her pants at all. So that semen is deposited at probably the time of Jessica's murder.
The evidence that Jessica did not stand up after sex may not be enough to convince a jury that she was murdered during the rape. But the forensic chemist is certain that Jessica's makeup found on the pillow was not a smear, which might happen if Jessica had fallen asleep with her makeup on.
That effectively boxes off the defence that it could have just been something naturally occurring, that somebody's physically gone to the extent of pushing a head into a pillow for a period of time, is an act that takes this into what you would class as murderous.
There's one last piece of the jigsaw to slot into place. What has happened to Jessica's mobile phone? Detectives carry out cell site analysis to try and solve the mystery and compare it with CCTV of Balachinder's movements in the area.
Cell site analysis on a mobile phone is done by the triangulation of the signals. And by triangulating those distances gives you an exact location. In a built-up urban area, you literally can put it down to the meter. What we have in this scenario is almost the dream evidence. You have CCTV footage, which is time-stamped, and you have a suspect leaving the venue where the murder happened. And you then get cell site data that show at that exact same time, in the same location, the victim's phone and the suspect's phone also leave that premises. But you can see on the footage there is only one person, the suspect, leaving and walking off down the street. That person's got our victim's phone.
Detectives gather CCTV from every possible location along his route to compare with the cell site data. It takes weeks, but yields interesting results.
He's seen going into the flat at 2 minutes past 1 Thursday afternoon. He leaves and he's seen on Union Street in Aberdeen at 17 minutes past 1, 15 minutes later. And in one of the shops you can see him walking along, and you could see him sort of looking at a phone. And then when he gets to the end of Union Street, at King Street, which is the street where he lives, there's a pub in the corner with a bin outside it, and you see him walking up a couple of steps and then coming down and then going back up King Street towards his flat. He's decided to switch those phones off and chuck them in the bin, and they're never recovered. By the time we get to the stage of identifying Balachinder and finding him on CCTV and following him, the bins have been collected multiple times since then. I mean, I think it's very compelling to a jury to show that very quickly after he's had sex with that lady, that he's left and taken her phones. If he'd taken them for a theft, he wouldn't have destroyed them and thrown them away. And he's not done that. He's taken them to dispose of evidence. So I think that's a very compelling piece of evidence for the jury when they're looking at all the different strands of evidence to factor that in as well.
But can he convince the jury of the rape and murder charges? A difficult task at any time, but made all the more difficult because of Jessica's profession and the public prejudice against it. Jessica McGrath has been found raped and murdered in a flat in Aberdeen. Police believe they have amassed enough evidence to prove that Balachinder, a student, is the murderer. They discovered a bin full of used condoms, which confirms her professional and meticulous use of condoms with every client. Forensic analysis of a pillowcase with Jessica's makeup on it shows she was forced face down into the pillow and smothered. And a £1 coin on the bed is changed from a taxi fare that Jessica took with Chinda shortly before she was killed. Thanks to CCTV of Chinda with Jessica and the witness evidence of the taxi driver, police have traced Chinda and matched his DNA to the semen found in Jessica's body when she died. Now, as the trial approaches, Gary Winter gathers his case files, hoping that nothing is left undone. Rape and murder are hard charges to prove. Has he done enough?
You never know with a jury. And when I've had prostitute murders in the past, some jury members can have preconceived ideas about that, which isn't always helpful.
If the prosecution say this is an act of rape, then the prosecution have to make a jury sure that she was not consenting. It's much easier for a defendant to claim consent if somebody is providing sexual services for a living. That shouldn't be the case. I make that absolutely clear. And increasingly, judges now give juries legal directions about what are called myths and stereotypes, that you shouldn't jump to conclusions. But of course, in this particular case, she was murdered as well. And that shows the clearest of hostile intents towards her by the defendant. And so it will be very difficult to see a scenario where she was consenting to sex, but then something happened that led to her being murdered. And so when you've got other acts of violence, then it's much easier to prove that that was non-consensual sex and therefore rape. There was evidence of intercourse having taken place, clearly, because his semen was found inside her. But she's not there to say, I wasn't consenting.
There's not a lot of physical injury here. I probably knew what he was going to try and say, that it was consensual. And pathology was, could you have had positional asphyxia? Could he just have been a large guy lying on top of her and it's been accidental? So I'm nervous on a number of levels.
The trial begins at Aberdeen High Court, and Gary can finally hear the defence's case.
The defence's position has been, he's had sex, but anything that's happened's accidental. Therefore, trying to diminish this to either a culpable homicide or no homicide at all, just a sad, tragic accident, but that the sex was consensual.
To counter the prejudice that juries often have against sex workers, the prosecution brings in a forensic pathologist to talk through the physical evidence on Jessica's body.
We had an expert in sexual assault who was able to basically say, for most rape cases that they've studied, only a third of those cases actually showed physical evidence of trauma to the vagina area. So what that says is, for 2/3 of all rapes, there will be no evidence of penetration. So that's to probably help a jury who think if you've been raped, you must be bruised. That witness is there to basically say, on most cases, you won't get it, so don't expect it in this case.
Having covered so many high court trials, you tend to get an instinct quite early on in terms of how you think that verdict's going to go. And I could tell quite early on that it was probably going to be a guilty verdict, given the level of evidence that there was against him.
After a 2-week trial, the jury reach a verdict.
I was delighted when he was found guilty for all 3 charges: the murder, the rape, and for stealing the phones, perverting the course of justice.
I was sitting behind the dock, so I couldn't see Chinda's face. But I could see his shoulder starting to go up and down. I started to hear really stifled sobs, and he was trying to keep his crying under control. I think he thought he was going to walk free. This was a man that completely crumbled in that dock and realised that his life was over in that moment.
The presiding judge, Lord Beckett, said, "You raped a woman without the protection of a condom." He said, "You then murdered her by smothering her with a pillow and strangling her, probably using a scarf. You then sought to hide evidence which would link you to her." He said, "You might have gotten away with this, but for the excellent police work which led to your detection, arrest, and conviction." Lord Beckett then sentenced him to life in prison, that is a minimum 18 years for the rape and murder of Jessica McGrath.
I think it's probably the best you can get. It's the closest to justice that a family can feel, a murder conviction. I don't think it was one piece of evidence that's significant here. It is literally every piece of the jigsaw was required. The chemistry, the biology, the scene examination, eyewitnesses, telecommunications evidence, digital evidence, pathology, CCTV, all of it played a part in showing an overall picture. To get the conviction for all 3, I think, did require a meticulous level of detail boxing off all the avenues that he's got, so that ultimately, when he comes to trial, he doesn't really have anywhere to go.
In Jessica's case, she was working in a high-risk profession, but no matter what job you have, there should be a reasonable expectation on anyone that you should go home alive and safe at the end of the night. There was also the fact that Jessica was a mum, and there was a little boy who was told that his mum wasn't coming home. Whoever had to tell him that, no one should ever be put in that position.
This was the senseless murder of a hard-working young mother trying to do her best for her son. She was professional and careful about the risks she was taking, but a ruthless and cunning man, Balachinder, tricked her into believing he was just another punter. Instead, he raped and killed her by smothering her face into a pillow and strangling her with her own scarf because he couldn't take no for an answer. Because of the fine work of Detective Winter and his team, Balachinder will spend at least 18 years in jail before he walks free.